was a quiet street in Liverpool, the kind of place where neighbors trim their hedges on Sundays and children rode their bikes up and down the pavement without fear. But on this particular afternoon, that calm was shattered. From the grainy eye of a doorbell camera, a man appeared, his movements heavy, his expression set with rage. In his hand, he clutched a mobile phone. It wasn't to make a call. It wasn't to send a message. He raised it high, and in an instant, he brought it down across the face of a young woman. The victim was Paula Richardson. She stumbled back, hands instinctively rising in defense, her voice breaking as she pleaded for him to stop. Her eyes were wide, full of terror, and in that single moment, her world, and the world of her community, changed. Neighbors heard the screams. Some peered through curtains. Others stood frozen in their gardens. They watched in horror as violence unfolded on a street that had always felt safe. But this story did not begin with Paula on that pavement. It began years before, in the shadows of Liverpool's back alleys. Jennings, a name that would soon become notorious in headlines, had not always been a man with rage in his eyes. But from a young age, he was shaped by an environment that rewarded aggression and punished weakness. He grew up in the forgotten corners of the city, where broken glass and graffiti marked territory, and where boys were initiated into gangs before they had finished school. At 15, Jennings was already known to police. He was restless, volatile, and reckless enough to earn the attention of older gang members. In those back streets, he found the kind of belonging he thought he needed. Guns weren't missed there. They were real, tangible, traded in whispers and exchanged in the dark like pocket money. For Jennings, danger wasn't something to avoid. It was something to embrace. The streets became his education. Violence became his language. And respect, at least the kind he craved, was always measured in fear. Jennings thrived in that cycle. And by the time he entered adulthood, he was already carrying the reputation of someone you didn't cross. But Paula Richardson was nothing like him. In fact, she was the opposite. She was in her late 20s, with a warmth that made people gravitate toward her. Her friends often described her as the kind of person who lit up a room without trying. She worked hard, kept to herself, and dreamed of a future filled with small, quiet joys, a home, a family, and the peace she longed for. Yet behind her smile, Paula carried burdens. Life had not been easy, and though she rarely spoke about her troubles, the faint worry lines across her forehead hinted at the weight she bore. She kept her pain hidden, determined not to let it define her. But fate had other plans. On that day in Harbreck Grove, the sun was bright, the street ordinary. Children's laughter floated faintly from a distance. But the atmosphere changed the moment Jennings appeared. His walk was aggressive, his eyes locked on Paula. Neighbors later said his presence felt like a storm rolling in. He gripped the phone tightly, but it was clear he wasn't there to talk. Paula, sensing the danger, stepped back, raising her arms slightly as if to shield herself. Fear was etched across her face. She tried to reason with him, but reason was not what he came for. In seconds, the confrontation turned violent. Jennings lashed out, striking Paula hard. She cried out, her body twisting as she tried to protect herself. He shoved her to the ground, her back hitting the cold pavement. She curled into herself, shielding her face with her arms as he towered over her, his rage unchecked. Neighbors screamed. Some shouted for him to stop. Others were too afraid to intervene. And when one bystander, shaken but brave enough, raised a phone to capture the assault or call for help, Jennings turned on them. His face twisted, finger pointing directly at the witness. "I'll burn your house down," he snarled. The words cut through the street like a knife. Fear spread instantly. The bystander froze, phone hovering midair, the weight of the threat silencing him. Jennings ruled that moment, not just with violence, but with terror. He knew how to keep people quiet, and he thrived on it. Within minutes, Paula was unconscious. Blood streaked her face, her body limp as paramedics arrived and rushed her onto a stretcher. Neighbors looked on, helpless, as flashing lights and urgent shouts replaced the stillness of the street. Every second counted as the ambulance door swung open and Paula was pulled inside. Sirens wailed as a vehicle tore through Liverpool's roads, heading straight for the hospital. Fluorescent lights greeted her broken body as medical staff fought desperately to stabilize her. Meanwhile, police officers began their investigation. For them, this wasn't just another assault. Jennings was already known. His name linked with intimidation, violence, whispers of gang ties that never quite made it to conviction. But this time, the brutality had been captured on camera. Doorbell footage, witness accounts, medical reports. The evidence stacked higher than Jennings could ever push down. In a dimly lit office, detectives sat in silence, eyes fixed on a screen as the footage played. Jennings' rage was undeniable. His violence was laid bare. And as the images flickered, their jaws tightened. This wasn't just a man out of control. This was a predator who believed himself untouchable. But he wasn't untouchable anymore. Liverpool Crown Court became the battleground for justice. The wooden benches, the staring faces, the weight of silence, all of it pressing down as Jennings entered the dock. Dressed in prison attire, he stood with a stone-cold expression, refusing to show remorse. The prosecution painted him for what he was, a man who thrived on violence, who terrorized not only Paula but the community itself. Witnesses gave their accounts, voices trembling as they recalled his threats. And Paula's suffering was laid out in medical evidence, every injury a testament to his brutality. When the judge spoke, the words carried the force of the law and the anger of a community that had seen enough. Jennings listened, face unchanging, as the sentence was delivered. Years behind bars, his reign of fear, at least for now, was broken. For Paula, the scars went deeper than the bruises. She survived, but survival came with its own weight. Nights haunted by flashes of memory. Days shadowed by the knowledge that her own street had become the stage for her worst nightmare. Healing would take time, perhaps a lifetime. Harbreck Grove today stands quiet again. The children play. The neighbors greet each other. On the surface, life has returned to normal. But for those who witnessed that day, the pavement holds memories that will never wash away. Violence leaves marks, not just on the body, but on the soul of a community. Paula's courage in facing Jennings, in standing through the trial, became a quiet beacon, a reminder that even in the face of fear, justice is possible. Some stories end in silence, others in justice. For Paula Richardson, this story ended in both, silence where fear once ruled, and justice where a predator once stood. And in the end, Harbreck Grove learned the truth it will never forget, that violence can scar, but courage can heal. Like and subscribe for more thrilling true crime stories.